fine brew.
Want you like some coffee?
Welcome to this episode of Behind the Streams, where I take you, behind that mystery curtain and into the world of Janine, which nobody really wants to go in.
Pay no attention to that man behind the curtain.
But I'm taking you in whether you want to or not, I guess. This week's post was called The Elements of Your Style, which is a riff off the book The Elements of Style by Strunk White, the White, of course, being E.B. White, who wrote Charlotte's Web.
This is my magnum opus.
Strunk and White are always right. But it's less about, well, I suppose it is about writing style, but it's more about the elements that go into the creative persona and how they work together to create you, your work, keep you going, build your life,
Etc., etc., etc.
the elements that are the building blocks of your style, if you like. Now, of course, the structure of it's pretty obvious. It's built on the actual elements themselves, as defined by the Greeks,
Greek is still Greek to me.
the ancient Greeks, and refined by, I guess, Plato and Aristotle. The four basic elements: air, earth, water, fire. And then, Plato and Aristotle stuck their beaks in and added to it. I think I read Plato was the first to actually call them elements. Don't know what they were called before that. And then Aristotle said not only were there four elements, but each of those elements had a property.
Huge tracts of land.
So fire was hot and dry, air was hot and wet, water was cold and wet, and the earth was cold and dry. Whew! I'm surprised I remembered that. Aristotle's like, okay, you got your four classic elements, but you've also got a fifth element. Lilu. The fifth element is ether. In some cultures, it's called the void, where everything happens. Aristotle said the four earthly elements were corruptible, whereas the fifth element, the heavenly element, because there were no perceptible changes to it, it was not corruptible. A bit like me. Which I guess is a bit like Lilu, totally non-corruptible. The elements are represented by symbols, which I printed out some symbols here. So you got your fire and your water, and then air, which is above the fire there, which we all know that air feeds fire. And then you've got the water, which earth rises up out of. I think that's right. I'm probably messing all this up, but it doesn't really matter. This is not the first time I've written something based on these elements and the symbols. I once wrote a story, a poem actually, called Sawtooth Beasts, They Come Undone. Look what I prepared earlier. This is a printout of it. I'll put a copy of it in the post. And it was a poem about a bike race I did once called Rebecca's Private Idaho. And each stanza related to an element that you went through during the race. So, I'm nothing if not predictable in using the same kind of elemental structure to work out whether a creative persona has elements to it that perhaps influence your output. So, in terms of creative persona, you have your air, water, earth, fire, and ether. Air. I didn't do any research into what the classical Greeks said each one represented.
I never learned to read.
I just thought, okay, in terms of air, what could that represent in the creative persona? And the way I see it, air is momentum. You're getting blown about, it's pushing you in different directions. Sometimes it pushes you off the path, but you can always work your way back. Sometimes it pushes you off the path and to where you're supposed to be going. You're like a leaf, a paper cup.
I'm a leaf on the wind.
You just get thrown about in this tornado of life, landing where you're supposed to land. I said in the post that what is this? This is purpose. So for me, air or wind represents the purpose of the creative persona. What you're supposed to be doing, what you're trying to do, what you're trying to achieve. You're getting caught in updrafts, you're getting flung about, but ultimately it's always moving in a direction. It's the not standing still of air. As basic as breathing. Then I moved on to the second element of the creative persona. So we had air, now we're moving on to water. Water to me it's the sneaky element because it can seem super calm, but it's one of the most powerful elements that you have. in that it can erode landscapes and, just work on things until they're just worn down to the nubbin. In my mind, water in the creative persona, that is persistence. In that act of persistence, you're constantly washing away things you don't need until you're wearing yourself down to the absolute bare essentials of your creative being. This is pretty deep. I had a little paragraph in there about, I was looking up the percentages of water in the brain, which was 75%, and how much of the planet is water, which was 71%. And then I remembered, isn't celery like almost 100% water? And it is 95% water. And I was like, well, if celery wanted to be a writer or an artist or singer, it'd probably do pretty well. I mean, that's a lot of water element in you. And then I was like, nah, even with my 75% water brain, I'm smarter than celery. Celery! I know you're thinking, what the f*** is she talking about?
That makes no f***ing sense.
I often wonder that myself. Sometimes the 75% in my brain is just swimming a bit of backstroke lazily. Then I moved on to the third element of a creative persona, which is now, fire, of course, is the most destructive of all the elements in the creativity process, but it's also the most, I don't want to use the word delicious, but it's the most useful. Like, sometimes to move forward, you've got to burn things to the ground so that you can let go of all this baggage. And like a phoenix, I never mentioned phoenixes, but that's what I was, angling at. You rise from the ashes, get new skin, you come out, you're a different person.
By the time I get to Phoenix.
So fire to me in your creativity, that's the cleansing of just bad ideas and things that aren't working. Like, fire allows you to...
Do you have any matches?
If you're working on something that's just not working out...
Try setting it on fire.
delete it, which is the equivalent of just burning it down. Burn it to the ground. So what does fire represent? I think fire represents, in the creative persona, this idea of production, the constant making of things, the burning it down, the building it up. Things burn brightly, and then you move on to the next thing, and the light of that thing fades away while the next fire begins to take hold of the project that you're working on.
That makes total sense.
So the fourth element of the creative persona is earth, obviously. That is the foundation. Like, you plant your little talons into the ground like a tree and you just hold on. Okay, it's the foundation, right? You are firmly planted on it, and it is essentially your life. Every moment up until this point is your earth, the earth of you. And what you can do is mine that earth.
I'm a miner.
For ideas and just memories and rich seams of just inspiration.
Scones!
And in terms of what it is, earth is presence. It's being present. And so this earth being your life, you're just this gardener with an endless supply of seeds that you're constantly planting.
I'm a gardener.
To see what will sprout creatively. Or something like that.
We got it.
It is presence, it is stability, it is the foundation of your creative persona. And then the fifth element is ether, or the void. This is where it all takes place, in the space around you, which I described as the dreaming.
Explore the space.
It's where everything and nothing reside. That's kind of like, if I were to think of meditation, like that's where you go. You go to the void. And that allows all the other elements to intermingle with each other. And that's where ideas come from. You probably know where babies come from, but did you know that's where ideas come from? The void, the ether. Of course, I'm making this all up. It's not real. This is just my perception of, okay, if you were to look at a creative person, what are the elements that go into that person that allow them to be who they are? And it's the air of momentum, of the wind blowing them in the directions that they're supposed to be going. It's the water of persistence that keeps you going even when things aren't really going so great. There's the fire that is the constant building up, burning hot, and then burning down to ash so that you can build back up again, on and on and on. Then there is the earth, which is the stability, the foundational aspects of you, your life as an earth that you can mine the soil of and get the rich minerals for all your stories and creativity. And then finally, there's the ether, where you exist and mix together to materialize those dreams. It is the dream space, the dream world, the dream land,
I get it.
where it all takes place, the everything and the nothingness.
We all get it.
And then I finished it up by saying air, water, fire, earth, ether. You burn, you fly, you drown, you get dirty. You continue to find yourself in the gaps between the dream and the execution. Always, always, always in your element. Always elemental. Or, who knows, maybe it's all Greek to you. And that was my little link to the classical Greek concept of the 4 classical elements, to which Aristotle added ether. That's probably all I want to talk about this week. So I don't really know why I wrote this one. Nobody needs to know about the elements of an artist or a creative person. That's just the elements of a person in general, I think. Whether you become a creative person after all those elements collide and work together is entirely up to you. And on that note, we'll leave you to go about and make things, because I got my own to make. You've probably got to make. Let's move on. Just bringing up Lilu in this video has made me want to go watch The Fifth Element again. Excellent, excellent movie. See you next week.